We gaan beginnen.
Let's get started. Chris did already a bit of introduction of me, but again, my name is Gino, working for Xebia for almost 6 years now. Background as a product manager myself, working for both startups, actually developing something from the ground up and bring it to the market. And also working in larger corporate settings where my products were the first experiences that these larger corporates got from working in a different way, in a more agile way. And now I try to apply those experiences to my to the clients that I work with, and basically to help them to create better products and services, be more customer centric, be more value driven. And right now I'm doing it at Action in the Netherlands for the retailer, and I'm helping their digital organization to be more customer centric, to understand what the customer needs, why they're choosing certain products, and based on that information, based on their knowledge, develop their next product and services in a more effective way. So yeah, my contact information are here. If you like to connect with me afterwards, feel free, and we can talk about topics related to product management. Well, for today, let's talk about creating value. As you guys know, maximizing value is one of the core accountabilities for product owners, and how we do it. Let's take from idea to the delivery. You see that at the top, usually the ideation phase, we talk a lot about vision, product vision, and so on. And specifically in the newer release of the Scrum Guide, we have this thing called the product goal. So it's pretty clear what we want to achieve there. We want to have a great idea which we want to bring to the market. And at the bottom, we have the delivery activities, which are also pretty clear to many teams. And that's basically following the Scrum cycle. Every 2 weeks or so, you'll be delivering a little piece of additional value to your customer. But in the middle, the discovery activities, in my experience, not a lot of teams are actually putting enough emphasis in the discovery phase. And in the discovery phase, we're talking about all possible solutions that they are, and to find out which of those solutions are the best to be actually built. So we want to gather to validate our ideas before we actually build them. But I see usually that teams actually first build something and then hopefully validate if this was a good idea or not. And doing that is a very costly way of validating your ideas, because you already spent your development efforts and time and if you then find out that something that you built was not the right one, you might have wasted some effort and time and money. And that's just a shame, because there are ways of dealing with this and putting more emphasis in the discovery activities. And especially, for example, in the lean startup methodology, we have something which is called the build, measure, learn loop, which is actually helping you to go through your discovery activities in a more effective way. And it starts with, you have this idea, and we go through the build phase. And by build, they don't mean actually build something by coding. They're saying, let's build the MVP, minimum viable product. So what is the minimum amount of effort that we can put to build something which is which either looks real or feels real or evokes some sort of interaction. So in the next phase of our process, in the measurement, we can actually talk to real customers, end users, stakeholders, and show them what we have built and gather feedback, gather data. And if we can gather on our own data in the next phase, in the learn phase, we can actually analyze that before we went in the build phase, we had these assumptions, these riskiest assumptions or hypotheses. And can we validate if these assumptions were right, or say, okay, we just didn't thought this well enough through, or our assumptions are not right, and what kind of changes do we need to take. And by going through this loop, we are actually reducing the amount of uncertainty which is connected to to work in a product development environment where we are dealing with uncertainties, and this way we can reduce that uncertainty. Another concept I like to talk to you about is the cost of change. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but it's talking about how much it will cost you to change an idea if you got it wrong in time. And the notion is here, if you, at the beginning of the process, where you haven't actually built anything, you have this idea, you have this assumption, and you find out that it was not the right one, it's relatively low cost to change those ideas because you don't have anything built. So changing it won't cost you anything. And you have a lot of options to choose from because basically you haven't done anything. So anything that you choose is okay. But later in process, if you further you go in time, you have built something, you actually deliver something to your customers in the hands of your customer, and then if you want to change something, you have to deal with everything else that you already have created. So you're creating some legacy. You need to consider what happens if you change something at the end state. What happens with the stuff that you did before? But also that you have less options to choose from in a later stage because you already have built a lot of stuff. You have less options to choose from. So it actually pays off to have your assumptions validated early on in the process because the cost of change will be lower and you have more options to choose from. And one way of doing it is by running experiments, running your own experiments, and finding out what those assumptions mean to you, and which of them are valid and which are need to be pivoted on. And this is, by the way, not something that I only say. Others say this as well. For example, Jeff Bezos, and he's talking about experimentation and the success of his company. And a great quote is here: "Our success at Amazon is a function of how many experiments we do per year, per month, per day, and so on." So the more experiments that they do, the more successful, the more success they're measuring. That's a very powerful message to give. And if I talk to the product owners that I work with, and if I ask them how many experiments are you doing per sprint, usually the answer is just zero. Basically, we are so caught up in our delivery process that we are not getting enough out of our discovery activities. Basically, we're just delivering, and we are hoping that we're delivering the right ones, so that the ideas that we got from our stakeholders or our team or ourselves, that those are the right ones. And that's just leaving value behind. That's not the way to maximize value. And this one is from CEO of Microsoft, talking about those ideas and say, okay, basically everybody has ideas. Instead of saying you have an idea, let's say you have a hypothesis, new hypothesis, and let's go test it as fast as cheap as we can and find out if this is valid or not. So making validation part of your product development and treating ideas as hypothesis should be a core part of your way of working. And another favorite, if you're talking about opinion, so I think this is a good idea, or I think that's a good idea. This quote is from Edward Deming, which said, "In God we trust, all others must bring data." So trying to find ways to create your own experiments and get your own data, and stay away from just talking about opinions. I think this is a good idea, or I think we should do that. No, let's just test it and find out if this is valid or not. And you can do this very easily and very, very cheaply as well. So let's see if we can talk about one of these ways of doing that. The example I like to use here is called paper prototyping, and as a word it says, is using just plain paper or something similar to that, maybe Miro or something, to build your prototypes and have your experiments very easily set up. And if we're talking about prototyping, I like to distinguish the high fidelity prototypes from low fidelity prototypes. And with high fidelity prototypes, we have these fully worked out and drawn and perfect looking designs, and some level of coding already in them. So they're actually interactive. You can actually show your ideas and okay, this is how my idea would look like if you would use it on an iPhone or something. As you can see, you can basically mimic the whole thing here at the right, and it gives you a lot of feedback, but it also costs a lot of time and effort and expertise to set up. And on the other hand of the spectrum, we have these things we call low fidelity prototypes, and these are basically drawings, cutouts, post-its, whatever, just to convey an idea and to convey a hypothesis, and not to show how great the design looks like. That's not part of this low fidelity prototype, but only to show these are ideas, this is how it will work, and this is the flow, and this is what you can do with it. And in my experience is, if we're talking about the discovery phase, especially at the beginning of our discovery phase, when you have this idea, when you're talking to your stakeholders, you using low fidelity prototypes will give you as much as learning as you would do the high fidelity prototype. Because again, at the beginning, we're just validating if an idea is viable enough or not how great it looks like. So I used it throughout my career with all the projects that I was involved with, the low fidelity prototypes, especially at the beginning of the journey or beginning of the breakdown of an idea. I'll give you an example later how I used it myself. Just also thinking about the time, I can talk a lot more about how these prototypes are set up. But I like to show you at this moment a short video created by guys at Google, how they use paper prototypes. So I'll start the video and then come back and continue the talk.
What is a prototype? The way I think about it, a prototype is an experimental model of an idea. It's a way to give our ideas a presence that we can put in front of somebody else to see if our idea has value. As a design researcher here at Google, I put ideas in front of people who use our products all the time. Is your idea ready to be put in front of people? Yes. Now, how will you know when it's right to show your idea to someone else? The fidelity of your prototype should match the fidelity of your thinking. So don't be afraid to share your prototypes early and often to get feedback to guide your next product design decision. So to get things started, let's take a look at how teams at Google take an idea in their head and make the first stroke of the pen on paper.
Hi, my name is Melissa Powell, and I'm on Google's Developer Relations team. I get to work with designers, developers, and entrepreneurs both inside and outside of Google to solve some pretty tough design challenges.
And I'm Miriam Sheikh, a senior user experience designer at Google. I design ad experiences to make them better and simpler to use for products such as Google Search, AdWords, and DoubleClick. And we're here to talk to you about sketching and paper prototyping. I often work in digital prototyping and graphic design tools to create high-fidelity mocks like these. But even at a high-tech company like Google, we generally start the design process with something that looks a lot more like this. Sketching is a fundamental part of the design process and can help you make key decisions about what to design. It can be as simple as drawing on a piece of paper or even a post-it note. Or you can use any of these common materials to create a more realistic sketch and share your sketch with others. Sketching can be used in nearly any stage in the product design process. You can use different types of sketches depending on who you're working with and what you need to communicate. Sketching is great when thinking through all of the initial ideas running through your head. You can sketch to outline the steps in a user flow, explore a variety of layouts, and to show the basic app structure, or what we commonly call a wireframe. Once you've agreed on the rough layout, we usually create higher fidelity sketches with details such as buttons, images, and color. At this point, you may decide to transfer your sketches to your digital tools, but the more you can flesh out your ideas on paper, the faster you'll move on your computer. During mid-development and even post-launch, you may need to rethink your design and want to quickly visualize new ideas. So you might bust out a pen and paper even if you already have high-fidelity digital prototypes. It can be faster to communicate and validate your new ideas through sketches before you have to make those changes to your digital prototype.
So yeah, this video should give you a little bit of feeling what we were talking about. So basically, we're using pen and paper to sketch out what the ideas are, and it gives you a more tangible way of talking about them with your stakeholders. And again, why this work is really, it helps you to validate your assumptions. So you have these assumptions, you draw it on paper and show it to somebody and get feedback very fast if this is a good idea or not, or if they understand it and can interact with it. It's again very cheap way of doing it. You basically don't have or have basically no development costs other than the time that you or maybe one UX person in your team spends on it. The tangible part we already talked about. And what also is a little bit forgotten, it also helps you to understand implicit needs from your customers as well. So explicit needs are the ones that people easily talk about. I need this, I need that. But implicit needs are the ones that they don't know yet. And by observing as a product manager how they interact with your prototypes, you can get an understanding of, okay, these are things that they immediately are gravitated to and understand and then can start using it. So those are the clear ones or valuable ones. And the other things, they are untouched, or people look at them but don't understand or are a bit confused. So there's something going on there, and you can ask more questions about those topics to get more feedback about them. And this can only be done if you can present something physical or visual to them. And you cannot get this kind of interaction with your end user if you're only talking about concepts in your head. I think we should do this, or I think we should do that. So using it will give you just better feedback. Let me give you some examples of how I used it. At the left, we work with a company with a shopping platform, and they had an idea of we want to create a social shopping experience while you're shopping at home. And our target audience were female young professionals, ages from 25 to 40. And basically just imagine three girls getting together and going to the shopping center and have that social experience, but recreate that while using Zalando or ball.com while you're at home. So during our first initial experience, we created the paper prototype on the left, and we went out to the hallway and grabbed first couple of colleagues, female colleagues, which were in our target audience, and we brought and showed them to this. And we asked them, how would you use this to recreate the social experience with your friends? And we already immediately got feedback, and all of this costed us maybe 2 hours to do. And at the right, I worked with Volkswagen and SEAT to create an app for their car buyers. And we created this actual prototypes or paper prototypes. And at the end of that session, we took those prototypes and drove to the first dealership and asked, look, can we talk to some of your customers here? And they said, yeah, okay, no problem. So we were talking like within hours with real car buyers about the ideas that we had, and we immediately got very valuable feedback to what to pursue and what to change and what to remove from app before actually spending any development time on it. And again, another personal war story that I had, as I said, I was product manager myself. I worked, for example, for DHL, the package delivery company. And I was responsible for their global pilot for creating an app which optimized the routes that the couriers needed to take. Back then, this was really cutting edge, and it gave them a couple of benefits, values. One was that, they had more efficient routes, so they could bring more packages. But the other one was also that they can give some sort of estimates when the package will be delivered. So people were also interested in that. And it also helped DHL, because if people know that the package is coming, I don't know, at 2 o'clock, they probably are at home. So their first time delivery rate went also up. So it was more cost efficient for them to deliver packages. So a lot of value to be gained there. And how I did it was, as a product manager, I had my basically weekly refinement sessions with my team. And once in a while, let's say every 3 weeks or so, I invited a couple of important stakeholders to my refinement sessions. And I had in those sessions, so these stakeholders, one tech lead, one UX designer, and we said, okay, let's look at the top of our backlog, what's happening there, and let's grab one of these big ideas and let's break it down. And we used usually story mapping technique. I don't know if you have discussed it here during the value stream story mapping, but you should definitely do. And while we were story mapping, the first layers of our story map, we tried to also create some sort of a paper prototypes. So how would these ideas that we've broken down look like in our app? And this gave us actually two benefits in that session. While we were creating those paper prototypes, we were already getting feedback from our stakeholder that's saying, yeah, this works well, and or this doesn't work well, but also managing their expectations, because I don't know how you do it with your stakeholders. My stakeholders had always more ideas than I could build. And by saying, okay, these are the ideas that we put in our prototypes, we were already managing their expectations that these are the things that we will be focusing on, and the other ideas we won't be focusing on. So they know what to expect. And all of these basically cost me, I don't know, roughly 2 hours. So we started in the morning at 9 o'clock, and in 11 o'clock, we had already broken down our bigger ideas. We had some prototypes ready. And in the afternoon, I drove to the first hub near me. That's where all the packages come together. And from there, the couriers leave. And I grabbed the first courier that I could find, and I would ask them, okay, look, I'm a product manager for this product. I'm working on this thing. How would you use this to achieve a certain goal? So I wouldn't say, what do you think about the app? Because then you will get not that much value out of the answers that you get. But I was describe a scenario. Let's say you want to deliver your first package. How would that look like? And they basically interacted with my design. And when they press on the paper, on the button, I removed that paper and showed them another paper. And that's how I went through the validation phase. And already in the afternoon, I had basically validated all our assumptions and brought these things back to the office and could create the backlog for the next coming weeks for my team to be able to work on validated ideas and deliver the values. And one of the great things that I learned there, for example, was at the beginning, one of the ideas that we had was it would be great if we had this very optimized and route visually presented to the couriers. And it was a lot of effort that we had to do to develop that. But once I was presenting it to the couriers, I found out that they are actually not that interested in the whole route. They're just interested in a button to press to show them what's the next location that they need to visit. And the whole route thing is not that interesting to them. They just want to deliver the next package. So by learning that, I could change all the assumptions that we had, spend more time on the things that are valuable to them, and skip on that very costly visual representation of the whole route. So it was a great learning, and I got that only by doing these paper prototyping thing first. Also looking at the time, let's move to the next part. Let me give you some tips that you can start using immediately, actually. And I think this should be part of your tool bag as a product owner yourself. One is downloading paper browsers. You can actually type them in Google, and you can find these ready-made templates which you can print on A4 paper. This one is an example of a web browser on the desktop. You can also download them for Androids or iPhones. And I always had a stack of these papers in my laptop bag. So anytime that I had conversation with my stakeholders, I grabbed a couple of them and started drawing. Sometimes it was really good enough to present it also to my team. Sometimes it was not that great, but that is not the point. The point is that while you're having this conversation, you're drawing something, and you can show and have a conversation with your stakeholder at a deeper level. So definitely, I would suggest you downloading some of them and having it in your tool bag. If you want to take it to the next step, you can try Balsamiq. I have a great experience with this tool. It's a really easy drag and drop tool which can help you to create low fidelity prototypes. You can print them or export them as PDF or whatever. It doesn't take any learning. It's just drag and drop. So yeah, but if you don't want to pay any money, you can also use PowerPoint. You can download these free templates, which you can find online. I have an example here also in this presentation. This gives you all these design elements, these UI elements, which you can also drag and drop using PowerPoint to create your paper prototypes, to have your first validation very fast and very early using these tools. So yeah, I can talk a lot more, and usually during our trainings, I'll also give you some time to experiment with this, but unfortunately during this talk, we have limited time. So I'll keep it here and see if there are any questions. Does it make any sense, by the way, the things that I was talking about? Yeah, I see a lot of people nodding yes, so I'm glad. This is, again, if you haven't done this before, I understand there's a barrier to get in, but really it's so easy and so valuable to do. I would recommend every product owner that I work with to experiment with this at least a couple of times to see what it will do for you.
Can I ask a question, Gino?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, it's really great to do so many experiments, even during sprints. But I'm wondering, how did you find the right users to test with, from the right audience, the target audience, all the time? Because if you do so many experiments, you should have many users to your disposal to test with. How do you do that?
Yeah. It starts with before actually going through the tests, defining what your hypothesis is and where you want to test those hypotheses. And a technique which is used more often is, for example, discussing who your target audience are, creating personas. And if you have created those personas, it gives you much more, narrower look where to find those users. For the examples that I got, I knew that I want to work with the couriers, and where I could find couriers were at the hubs. For Volkswagen, we knew that we want to have car buyers, and where can you find car buyers was at car dealerships. And these could be ways of finding your audience. If you're working with the online platform, there are also different beta groups which you can sign up, and you can sign up your app for to say, okay, I'm looking for these kind of demographics, and they will help you to be connected to those kind of people who are willing to talk to you about your new product idea. But I would always say, look first yourself first, and it's not. It shouldn't be a barrier for you to do these kind of activities.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great point to wrap it up. Looking at the time, we can also linger on for a couple of more minutes, but I just want to thank Gino for his great examples. And he actually triggered me with his story map and then put a design sketch directly next to the slides. I don't think I've ever done that. But it sounds like a very useful tip. And go out there, talk to customers. I especially like the examples that he gave. Your sales should be talking to potential customers.
Yeah.
Typically, those people know where to find potential because they're talking to those people. Your marketing department is trying to contact people who are not talking to your sales yet. So those are all great entries to make a connection with your customers. Please tell them that you are not sales, because nobody trusts sales. So tell them your product management. I'm not here to sell you anything. I just want to learn about cars and about products, whatever your product is. I think that's the final tip. Thanks again, and see you next week. Next week we'll have the Ask Us Anything session. So we swapped these sessions around so we could have time in Gino's busy agenda to do this session. But I hope to see you again next week, and it's great to see all the familiar faces. I'll try to answer most of the questions in the chat afterwards and in the community. All right.
Right. It's great seeing you all, and also Bart, our colleague.
Yeah.
Hi. And hopefully see you next time.
All right. See you.
Right, thank you.
Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this episode, move on to the next one. Or
join us or follow us on Medium and LinkedIn to get inspired with even more content.
Or come to our training.